Getting to Yes, Negotiating Agreement Without Giving In, by Roger Fisher, William Ury, and Bruce Patton. Hello and welcome. I'm so glad you're here with me today. Picture this. Two people in a library, locked in an increasingly absurd standoff. One desperately wants the window open. The other is equally determined to keep it shut. They're haggling like their lives depend on it. Should it be open just a crack? Halfway? Three-quarters? The tension is building, and neither one is budging. It's almost comical, except they're both genuinely frustrated. Then the librarian walks in. She sizes up the situation in seconds. But here's the thing. She doesn't ask about the window at all. Instead, she turns to the first person and simply asks, "Why do you want it open?" "To get some fresh air," he says. She looks at the other person. "And why do you want it closed?" "To avoid the draft," comes the reply. The librarian thinks for just a moment, then walks into the next room and opens that window wide. Fresh air floods in, but there's no draft. Problem solved. It's such a simple story, isn't it? Almost too simple. But hidden in that brief exchange is one of the most transformative secrets about human interaction ever discovered. This same principle has stopped wars, settled billion-dollar disputes, and rescued countless relationships from the brink. Today we're unpacking that secret. We're diving into a book that's basically a revolution, disguised as a business manual. It's called Getting to Yes, Negotiating Agreement Without Giving In. Created by the brilliant minds at the Harvard Negotiation Project, Roger Fisher, William Ury, and Bruce Patton, this book has sold millions of copies and become the gold standard for anyone who needs to deal with other people. Which, let's face it, is all of us. Whether you're asking your boss for a raise, convincing your partner where to eat dinner, or negotiating with your parents about curfew, you're a negotiator. It's not some special skill for diplomats and lawyers. It's life. But here's the problem. Most of us are terrible at it. We think we only have two options. We can be soft, avoiding conflict, making concessions to keep the peace. But then we end up feeling like a doormat, resentful and exploited. Or we can be hard, treating every disagreement like a war, digging in our heels, demanding victory. But then we burn bridges and exhaust ourselves in the process. It's a miserable choice, right? Either be a pushover or be a jerk. But what if that's a false choice? What if there's a third way, one that lets you be firm about what matters while still being kind to the people involved? A way to solve problems together instead of fighting each other? That's exactly what this book promises. And by the time we're done today, you'll have a complete roadmap for turning any disagreement, big or small, into an opportunity for a wise and fair solution. This isn't just about winning arguments, it's about winning at life itself. So let's dive in. The Great Trap: Why We Fight Over Positions. To really appreciate the genius of Getting to Yes, we first need to understand the problem it solves. The authors call it positional bargaining. It's everywhere. Movies, politics, your local flea market. It's what we all do instinctively. Here's how it works. Each side stakes out a position, argues for it, and then makes tiny concessions until they hopefully meet somewhere in the middle. Think about haggling at a yard sale. The seller says, "This vintage lamp is $75. You counter with, "It's chipped. I'll give you 15. And the dance begins. She comes down to 60. You go up to 25. Maybe you settle at 40. Maybe you both walk away annoyed. That's positional bargaining in a nutshell. On the surface, it seems to work, right? But the Harvard team looked closer and discovered this method is deeply, fundamentally broken. It fails on three critical levels. First, it produces unwise agreements. When we argue over positions, our egos get tangled up in them. The more you defend your position, the more committed you become to it. Not because it's actually the best solution, but because backing down feels like losing. You're no longer solving a problem, you're trying to save face. The book shares a chilling real-world example from the Cold War. The US and Soviet Union were negotiating a nuclear testing ban. The Soviets agreed to allow 3 on-site inspections per year. The Americans insisted on 10. And the talks completely collapsed over that single number, 3 versus 10. No one even bothered to define what an inspection actually meant. 1 person for a day? 100 people for a month? They were so locked into their positions that they forgot to explore the real interests underneath. Verification for the US, minimal intrusion for the Soviets. The result? No agreement. The world stayed dangerous. That's what happens when you get stuck on positions. Second, positional bargaining is incredibly inefficient. The whole process encourages stubbornness. You start with an extreme position. You dig in. You make the tiniest possible concessions, only when absolutely forced to. It takes forever just to figure out if an agreement is even possible. It's exhausting, like trying to move a boulder uphill with a teaspoon. And third, perhaps most painfully, it wrecks relationships. It turns negotiation into a contest of wills. I'm not backing down, my way or the highway. Each side tries to force the other to cave through sheer stubbornness. Naturally, this breeds anger and resentment. One side feels steamrolled, their legitimate concerns ignored. Friendships shatter, business partnerships dissolve, families split apart. The bitterness can last forever. Now, some people see this coming. They recognize the cost of playing hardball, so they decide to play soft. They avoid conflict, make concessions easily, treat the other side as friends. This is often how we negotiate with family or close friends. And it is efficient in a way. Agreement comes quickly. But is it a wise one? The authors reference that classic O. Henry story, where a husband sells his watch to buy beautiful combs for his wife's hair, while she sells her hair to buy a chain for his watch. Touching, yes, but neither of them got what they actually needed. Worse, playing soft makes you incredibly vulnerable to anyone playing hard. If they make demands, and you make concessions, the game is rigged in their favor. You'll lose your shirt every time. So here we are. Hard bargaining damages relationships and often leads nowhere. Soft bargaining avoids conflict, but leaves you getting taken advantage of. It feels impossible. But the Harvard team says you don't have to choose. You can change the game entirely. The third way, principled negotiation. The alternative is what the authors call principled negotiation, or negotiation on the merits. It's designed to produce wise outcomes, efficiently and amicably. And it boils down to 4 fundamental principles. If you remember nothing else from our time together today, remember these 4. They're the foundation of everything. 1. Separate the people from the problem. 2. Focus on interests, not positions. 3. Invent options for mutual gain. 4. Insist on using objective criteria. Let's walk through each one. This is where the magic lives. Principle 1. Separate the people from the problem. This is the foundation. The authors remind us of something we often forget, especially in high-stakes situations. You're not dealing with abstract entities or corporate logos. You're dealing with human beings. They have emotions, values, personal histories, and unpredictable reactions. And so do you. This human element can torpedo a negotiation before it even starts. We get angry, scared, or offended. Our egos get bruised. We confuse our perceptions with reality. And we tend to mash together the relationship with the actual problem. A comment like, "The kitchen is a mess," might be meant as a simple observation, but it lands like a personal attack. Positional bargaining makes this so much worse. When you take a firm position, the other side hears it as, "I don't care about you." The people and the problem become one tangled mess. The solution? Untangle them. Deal with the people problems directly, without making concessions on the substance. The authors break people problems into three categories: perception, emotion, and communication. First, perception. Here's a crucial insight. The conflict doesn't exist in objective reality. It exists in people's heads. Their thinking is the problem. It's not enough to know they see things differently. You need to truly understand the power of their point of view. You need to step into their shoes. The book gives a great example of a tenant and landlady negotiating a lease. The tenant thinks the rent is already too high, the apartment needs painting, and the landlady is cold and uncaring. The landlady thinks the rent hasn't been raised in years, the apartment has suffered heavy wear and tear, and she's actually been very considerate by not intruding. Both are right from their own perspective. You can't get anywhere by arguing about whose reality is correct. Instead, discuss each other's perceptions openly, without blame. And here's a powerful move. Act inconsistently with their expectations. The authors point to Egyptian President Anwar Sadat's historic 1977 visit to Jerusalem. Israelis saw him as an enemy who'd launched a surprise attack just 4 years earlier. To change that perception, Sadat did something shocking. He flew to the capital of his enemies and spoke to their parliament. He didn't act like an enemy. He acted like a partner. That single, dramatic gesture made the peace treaty that followed possible. Next, emotion. In bitter disputes, feelings often matter more than words. Emotions on one side fuel emotions on the other. Fear breeds anger. Anger breeds fear. It's a vicious cycle. The first step is simply to recognize emotions, theirs and yours. Are you nervous? Are they furious? What's causing these feelings? Don't ignore them or brush them aside. Name them explicitly and acknowledge them as legitimate. It's perfectly fine to say, the people on our side feel we've been treated unfairly, and frankly, they're upset about it. That's a real concern for us. Talking about feelings doesn't make you weak. It makes the negotiation less reactive and more purposeful. Sometimes, you just need to let the other side vent. Don't interrupt their angry speech. Don't storm out. Sit there, listen, and let them pour it all out. People get psychological relief from simply expressing their troubles. Once the steam is released, they're far more likely to work constructively on the problem. Finally, communication. The authors identify 3 big problems. First, negotiators often aren't actually talking to each other. They're performing for their own side, trying to look tough. Second, even if you are talking, they might not be listening because they're too busy preparing their next rebuttal. Third, even if they are listening, they might be misunderstanding you. The cure is active listening. Pay close attention to what's being said. Ask them to clarify. Request that they repeat points if there's any confusion. And here's the cheapest concession you can ever make. Let them know they've been heard. You don't have to agree with them, but you should be able to say, let me make sure I understand. From your point of view, the situation looks like this. When you can state their case back to them, even better than they stated it themselves, you completely disarm them. They can no longer accuse you of misunderstanding. Only then will they be open to hearing your perspective. So the first principle: stop seeing yourselves as adversaries facing each other across a table. See yourselves as partners, sitting side by side, facing a shared problem together. Attack the problem, not the people. Principle 2. Focus on interests, not positions. This takes us back to that library. The 2 people had positions, window open and window closed. but their interests were fresh air and no draft. The librarian's solution worked because she ignored the stated positions and focused on the underlying interests. This is the beating heart of the entire method. The basic problem in negotiation isn't conflicting positions. It's the conflict between each side's needs, desires, concerns, and fears. Your position is what you've decided. Your interests are what caused you to decide. The book gives a monumental example: the 1978 Camp David peace treaty between Israel and Egypt. For years, they'd been locked in conflict over the Sinai Peninsula, which Israel had occupied since 1967. Their positions were completely incompatible. Israel insisted on keeping part of Sinai. Egypt demanded every single inch be returned to Egyptian sovereignty. They drew map after map, trying to find a dividing line, but it was hopeless. The breakthrough came when they stopped looking at positions and started looking at interests. Israel's real interest wasn't owning the land, it was security. They didn't want Egyptian tanks ready to roll across the border at any moment. Egypt's interest wasn't just territory, it was sovereignty. The Sinai had been part of Egypt since the pharaohs. They would not let another foreign power control even an inch of it. Once these interests were clear, a solution emerged. They devised a plan that returned all of Sinai to complete Egyptian sovereignty, but demilitarized large areas to ensure Israeli security. The Egyptian flag would fly everywhere, but Egyptian tanks would be nowhere near Israel. They reconciled their interests, even though their positions had seemed impossible to reconcile. This works for two reasons. First, for every interest, there are usually several possible positions that could satisfy it. Second, behind opposed positions lie many more interests than just the conflicting ones. There are shared and compatible interests. A tenant and landlord might have opposing positions on rent price, but they share an interest in stability. The landlord wants a reliable tenant. The tenant wants a permanent home. They share an interest in maintaining the property. They share an interest in a good relationship. When you see all these shared and compatible interests, that single point of conflict becomes much more manageable. So how do you identify interests? The authors give two simple but powerful techniques. First, ask why. For every position they take, ask yourself why. Why does your boss want that report by Tuesday? Is his boss demanding it, or is he just trying to look efficient? You can also ask directly, what's your main concern with the Tuesday deadline? Second, ask why not. Think about the choice they're facing. Why haven't they already made the decision you want? What interests of theirs are standing in the way? The book provides a fascinating analysis of an Iranian student leader's perspective during the 1980 hostage crisis. Looking at all the reasons to say yes to releasing the hostages versus all the reasons to say no, you can see why, as terrible as it was, holding the hostages seemed rational from his viewpoint. To change his mind, you'd have to change that balance sheet. And remember, the most powerful interests are basic human needs: security, economic well-being, belonging, recognition, and control over one's life. If you can address these fundamental needs, your chances of reaching a lasting agreement skyrocket. Principle 3. Invent options for mutual gain. So you've separated people from the problem, and you're focused on interests. But what if there still doesn't seem to be a way forward? What if the pie just isn't big enough? This is where creativity comes in. The authors tell the classic story of two kids fighting over an orange. They finally agree to split it in half. The first kid takes her half, eats the fruit, and throws away the peel. The second kid takes his half, throws away the fruit, and uses the peel to bake a cake. They settled for half an orange each, when they could have had the whole fruit for one and the whole peel for the other. They left value on the table. This happens constantly. We get so fixated on our own position that we fail to see creative solutions that could benefit everyone. The authors say there are 4 major obstacles blocking creative thinking. 1. Premature judgment. That critical voice in your head shoots down new ideas before they even have a chance. 2. Searching for the single answer. We think our job is to narrow options, not expand them. 3. Assuming a fixed pie. We see it as zero-sum. The less for you, the more for me. 4. Thinking solving their problem is their problem. We're so focused on our own needs that we don't bother developing solutions appealing to their interests. To overcome these obstacles, you need a different approach. The key is to separate inventing options from judging them. Invent first, decide later. The best way to do this? Brainstorming sessions. Gather a few colleagues or friends and set one crucial ground rule: no criticism or evaluation allowed. The goal is quantity, not quality. Generate as many ideas as possible, no matter how wild. Wild ideas are encouraged because they spark more realistic ones. You can even brainstorm with the other side. It's riskier, but the advantages are huge. It produces ideas that already account for their interests, and it creates an atmosphere of joint problem solving. Once you've opened up creative space, the authors introduce a wonderful tool called the circle chart. It has 4 steps. 1. Problem. What's wrong? What are the symptoms, e.g., a polluted river runs past my land? 2. Analysis. Diagnose it. Sort into categories. Suggest causes. E.g., high chemical content, probably from upstream factories. 3. Approaches. What are possible strategies, e.g., reduce chemical discharge, bring in fresh water? 4. Action ideas. What specific steps might work, e.g., state environmental agency could order the factory to limit discharge. This helps you move from a specific problem to general analysis, then to general solutions, and finally back to specific, practical actions. Another powerful technique: look for mutual gain. Shared interests make negotiations smoother. But here's a profound insight. Differences can also create solutions, not just problems. A stock buyer believes the price will rise. The seller believes it will fall. That difference in belief makes the deal possible. Jack Sprat could eat no fat. His wife could eat no lean. Together they licked the platter clean. Look for differences in interests, beliefs, time preferences, risk tolerance. These are building blocks for creative agreements. Finally, make their decision easy. Your success depends on them making a decision you want. So don't hand them a problem. Hand them an answer. Think about what a yesable proposition looks like from their viewpoint. Draft it. Refine it. Make saying yes as painless as possible. Principle 4. Insist on using objective criteria. This is the final pillar, and it's what protects you from being bullied. No matter how well you understand interests or how creative you are, you'll almost always face some conflicting interests. You want lower rent. The landlord wants higher. How do you resolve this without a contest of wills? The answer: negotiate based on standards independent of either side's will, that is, based on objective criteria. Imagine you're building a house. The contract calls for reinforced concrete foundations, but doesn't specify depth. The contractor suggests 2 feet. You think 5 feet is appropriate. He says, I went along with you on the steel roof girders. Now it's your turn to go along with me on foundations. No sane person would yield to that logic. You wouldn't horse trade on safety. You'd say, look, I want foundations strong enough to hold up the building. What are government specifications for this soil? How deep are foundations in other buildings around here? You'd insist on objective safety standards. Why not do the same in every negotiation? Instead of haggling over price, insist the price be based on market value, replacement cost, or competitive prices. The approach is simple. Commit to reaching solutions based on principle, not pressure. Be open to reason, but closed to threats. This has enormous advantages. First, it produces wise and fair agreements. Agreements consistent with precedent are less vulnerable to attack. Second, it protects the relationship. It's easier to discuss objective standards than to battle over arbitrary positions. Third, it's efficient. You spend time talking about possible standards, not defending entrenched positions. The Law of the Sea Conference provides a fantastic example. India proposed a $60 million initial fee for deep seabed mining companies. The U.S. proposed no fee. Deadlock. Then someone discovered MIT had developed an economic model of deep seabed mining. This model gradually became accepted by both sides as objective. When India saw how their proposal would make mining economically impossible, they reconsidered. When the U.S. saw some fee was feasible, they changed their position too. No one backed down. No one looked weak. They just looked reasonable. They deferred to a fair standard. How do you use objective criteria? 3 basic steps. 1. Frame each issue as a joint search. Say you want a high price, I want a low one. Let's figure out what's fair. What objective standards might be relevant? 2. Reason and be open to reason. This isn't about finding arguments to support your position. Be genuinely open to persuasion on the merits. Act like a judge, willing to respond to reasons for applying different standards. 3. Never yield to pressure, only to principle. If the contractor threatens to charge more, unless you agree to 2-foot foundations, say, we'll settle the price on its merits too. Let's see what other contractors charge. If they say, don't you trust me, say, trust is separate. The issue is how deep foundations need to be for safety. Pressure takes many forms: bribes, threats, manipulative appeals to trust, or simple refusal to budge. The principled response is always the same. Invite them to state their reasoning, suggest objective criteria you think apply, and refuse to budge except on this basis. The tough questions. Now you might be thinking, this sounds great in theory, but what if the other side has all the power? What if they won't play along? What if they use dirty tricks? These are real-world questions, and the authors tackle them head-on. This is where theory meets reality. What if they're more powerful? The authors are realists. They admit no method guarantees success if all the leverage is on the other side. But a good method meets 2 objectives: protect you from making an agreement you should reject, and help you maximize whatever assets you do have. To protect yourself, people often rely on a bottom line, the worst outcome they'll accept. For a seller, it's the lowest price. The problem? It's rigid. It makes you decide in advance that nothing the other side says could change your mind. It closes your ears and kills your imagination. The solution is knowing your BATNA, your best alternative to a negotiated agreement. This might be the single most important concept in the entire book. Before any negotiation, you must have a clear answer to, what will I do if we don't reach agreement? Your BATNA is the standard for measuring any proposed agreement. Is the offer better or worse than your BATNA? If better, consider it. If worse, walk away. The power of the BATNA is that it gives you a real-world alternative, not an arbitrary number. It's your plan B, and the better your BATNA, the greater your power. The authors use the example of a wealthy tourist buying a brass pot from a poor vendor in Bombay. The tourist might be powerful in wealth, but in this negotiation he's weak unless he knows what comparable pots cost elsewhere. The vendor, though poor, knows the market. He knows what he can sell to another tourist. His BATNA is strong. The tourist's is weak. Negotiating power has nothing to do with wealth. It depends entirely on how attractive not reaching agreement is to each side. So develop your BATNA. Brainstorm actions you could take if no agreement is reached. Improve the most promising ideas into practical alternatives. Select the one that seems best. Knowing what you'll do if you walk away gives you confidence to negotiate on merits. What if they won't play? What if you try discussing interests and they just state positions? You try inventing options and they attack your ideas? You focus on merits and they attack you? The authors offer a brilliant strategy called negotiation jujitsu. Like in martial arts, you don't meet force with force. You don't push back. That just gets you stuck in their positional game. Instead, sidestep their attack and redirect it at the problem. Their attack usually consists of 3 moves: asserting their position, attacking your ideas, and attacking you. When they assert their position, don't reject it. Look behind it. Treat it as one possible option. Ask about the interests and principles behind it. Why do you feel that's a fair price? What's the reasoning? When they attack your ideas, don't defend them. Invite criticism. Ask what's wrong with your proposal. What concerns would this fail to address? Turn it around. If you were in my shoes, how would you handle this? This forces them to confront your side of the problem. When they attack you personally, don't counterattack. Recast their attack on you as an attack on the problem. When you say we don't care about the children's education, I hear your concern for them. We share that. What can we both do to reach agreement quickly? The 2 key tools of negotiation jujitsu are questions instead of statements and silence. Questions generate answers. Statements generate resistance. And silence is one of your best weapons. After asking an honest question, or after they make an unreasonable proposal, just wait. People feel uncomfortable with silence. They'll often feel compelled to break it by answering or offering something new. What if they use dirty tricks? What if they lie, use psychological warfare, or apply pressure tactics? The authors call this tricky bargaining. Most people respond in one of 2 ways: tolerate it or respond in kind. Both are mistakes. The answer is to negotiate about the rules of the game itself, using the same principles of principled negotiation. 3 steps. 1. Recognize the tactic. Know what's happening. Is it deliberate deception, psychological warfare like good cop/bad cop, positional pressure like take it or leave it? Often just recognizing the tactic neutralizes it. 2. Raise the issue explicitly. Bring it up. I may be wrong, but it feels like you 2 are playing good cop/bad cop. If you need a moment to sort out differences, feel free to take a break. Discussing the tactic makes it less effective. 3. Question the tactic's legitimacy. Negotiate about the process. Separate the people from the tactic. Don't attack their integrity. Question the tactic itself. I'm finding the sun in my eyes quite distracting. Unless we can fix that, I may need to leave early. Shall we find another spot? Insist on reciprocity. Shall we alternate spilling coffee on each other day by day? The message is clear. You don't have to be a victim. It's easier to defend principle than to defend an illegitimate tactic. Be just as firm as they are, but firm on the merits. The art of getting along and getting what you deserve. So what's the takeaway from all this? For me, the most powerful idea in getting to yes is that it completely reframes the purpose of negotiation. It's not about winning or losing. It's not a battle. It's a process of joint problem solving. The question isn't, who's winning? The question is, are we working together to find the wisest solution for both of us? Asking who's winning. A negotiation is like asking who's winning a marriage. If you're asking that question, you've already lost the more important negotiation. the one about what kind of relationship you want. This book shows us how to win that game. It gives us a way to be both effective and decent. It proves we don't have to choose between getting what we deserve and being the kind of person we want to be. We can have both. Its power lies in its deep understanding of human nature, our egos, fears, and need for recognition, and in providing concrete, actionable tools to navigate that terrain. It's not a bag of clever tricks. It's a philosophy, a mindset, a better way to handle our differences. And its principles are universal. They work whether you're a world leader at a peace summit or a teenager asking to borrow the car. So how can you start applying these ideas today without taking much risk? Here are 3 simple things. First, the next time you're in any kind of disagreement, no matter how small, just pause. Ask yourself 2 silent questions. What's my real underlying interest here? And what might their real interest be? Just asking that question, just shifting your focus from positions to interests, will change the entire dynamic. Second, think about an upcoming negotiation in your life. Maybe about a summer job or a school project. Before that conversation, take 5 minutes and think about your BATNA. What will you do if you can't reach agreement? What's your best alternative? You don't even have to tell them. Just knowing it yourself will give you quiet confidence that changes how you carry yourself. Third, try inviting criticism. Next time you propose an idea, instead of defending it, say, "I'm sure this isn't perfect. What might be wrong with this approach?" You'll be amazed at how it disarms people. It turns them from adversaries into collaborators, inviting them to help build a better solution. Getting to Yes is more than a book about negotiation. It's a guide to more effective, more humane, and ultimately more successful human interaction. It gives us language and a framework for turning conflict into cooperation. And in a world filled with so much division, that's a lesson we all desperately need. That was a summary of Getting to Yes by Roger Fisher, William Ury, and Bruce Patton. We've hit the highlights today, but I'll be honest. A summary is just a map. The real magic happens when you walk the territory yourself. When a particular story or phrase hits you in a way you didn't expect. This summary is designed to help you decide if this book is worth your time. If anything we've talked about today resonates with you, I truly hope you'll grab a copy. Reading it isn't just about learning techniques. It's an experience that can genuinely change how you see your relationships and the world. The link is in the description. If you found this summary valuable, please hit that like button and subscribe so you won't miss our next journey into another life-changing book. Let's keep learning and growing together.